Welcome to the Soberish Uprising, where we tell stories of finding freedom from alcohol on our own terms, making it our best power move. My name is Holly Crevo, a former heavy drinker who started a Soberish Uprising of her own over 2 years ago, and everything in her life has changed. On the Soberish Uprising, we tell our own stories with no judgment, no guilt, no shame, and encourage others to step into a place of sobriety to live their best life. Today is my own solo podcast, and I am so excited to be here back with you. My last episode was a little over a month ago. I took a little bit of a hiatus. August was a great month for a little bit of travel, a little bit of like resetting to do all the big things I want to finish out the year with. And something I learned in August, just a little bit of a reminder before we dig into today's topic, is a reminder of not trying to do too many things. I talk about this all the time with my clients, and I found myself doing it in August. And the repercussions of that were feeling like I wasn't doing enough. I couldn't do it. Was I set up to do the things I wanted to do? Am I even capable of it? Because I had set out to do a lot of big stuff in August. I am creating a program that I'll be launching, my website I am doing, wanting to do speaking. And for whatever reason, I had 2 or 3 little trips in August and work, I thought I could do all these things and I wasn't able to. And that's fine. I reset. That's what August was for. But just a reminder to give yourself the grace and be realistic in what you can do. Because as I said, the repercussions was this mindset of, well, crap, if I can't do this, am I able to do that? Which is none of that is true. That was just a story I told myself. But just a little bit of a reminder before we get into today's topic. So I am so excited. Today is kind of a celebration episode because last Wednesday, September 13th, was my 2-year soberish anniversary. Well, my birth anniversary. We're calling it Birthaversary because it's so much a birthday and an anniversary. A birthday in that it's a new beginning, it's a new chapter, and an anniversary because it's honoring a commitment to myself. So that was last Wednesday. 2 years of being soberish. It's hard to believe. It feels like I started yesterday to think that 2 years has gone by, to think of what's transpired over the past 2 years, moving, death, excitement, all the things. It's like, it's a little mind blowing. It's already been 2 years. And if you're new here, I started my sober journey on September 13th of 2021. A day before National Sober Day, which I talked about last week. I love the irony of also thinking, man, if I would have waited one more day, that would have been a better story. But I didn't. September 13th was that day. And I started because for years I've been thinking, I think I'm drinking a little too much. I just don't think it's fitting with what I want to do with my life. I feel like it's holding me back. But it wasn't bad enough for me to actually make a change until, in my perception, it did become bad enough. It became part of my almost everyday life. It was holding me back from getting up and keeping the commitments to myself. It was affecting my confidence. I was doing all this work in the self-development, human growth space. And then I was just kind of like dulling it with alcohol. And so I reached a point where I just was like, this can't just be who I am. Like, I can't be throwing my dreams away over like a shitty glass of wine. Like, I just can't do that. So I started this journey and it's been 2 years, and I'm a little shocked I'm here, to be honest with you. If you had asked me when I started on that day if I was going to be passionate about it, coaching other people, making it one of the biggest things I'm passionate about, I don't think I would have said yes. I don't, because when I started this, and why I think it was so successful and why it's successful for other people I know, is that I didn't make it a lifetime commitment because that felt really overwhelming. I didn't have a long intention. I thought it would be, my initial plan was 70 days. And I was like, sure, I'll do 70 days and I'll probably kind of somewhat go back to what I did, but not really. And so I just knew I had to be doing something different, but I didn't know what it would look like forever. I didn't think 2 years later it would be such a big part of who I am. But again, I made that commitment, not necessarily to not drink, but to make a commitment to myself. And those weren't aligned. I couldn't want to put all these efforts and all these things I was doing and then also make alcohol a part of my life. So that is something that, when I think of would I be surprised if I was here? Yes. And also no. And so we talk about soberish, and I'll share a little bit more about what my soberish looks like now. And you know, it's really about what is soberish. I get that a lot. It's making sobriety the main focus for your life. It's being sober 99% of your time, or maybe 95, whatever that is for you. But it's being really honest and clear about yourself. Is alcohol serving the person you want to be? Is alcohol serving the person you want to be? I've yet to meet one person that the alcohol fuels them into being a better mom, a better dad, a better business owner, a better friend. Like, that doesn't work that way. So it's really being honest of like, does sober align with this vision I want to be, and then creating a life around it. And why it's so great is it's such an empowering way to do things, right? It's saying, hey, I am just choosing me over booze. It's not that I can't drink. I just don't want to. Like, if anything else in my life was causing me to not sleep, to gain weight, to not be totally present, to feel sluggish the next day, to say things I didn't want to make, I would 100% cut it out. And so that is really around what soberish is. So today, now that we're getting into the meat of this episode, I want to share some of my key takeaways of 2 years of being soberish. Like, it still is like mind blowing that happened. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of the biggest differences between year 1 of being soberish and year 2 of being soberish. The first piece is that there was not near as much fear the second year as the first year. It was familiar. I had built safety in my body about what this looks like. I had faced so many first, right? The first holidays, the first happy hour, the first beautiful Sunday afternoon. I had so many of those first. So I kind of knew what to expect and how those would look. So there was less fear. And there was also, I had over, when I started, I had 365 days. When I started that second year, I had 365 days of evidence and data of what it felt like. I knew I could do it. I knew that I could go in to Christmas and not have wine and have a great time. I knew I could go to watch college football and have a ton of sparkling water and still cheer really loud. Like, I had built that up in myself. And so I had evidence, I had history to look back. And so when it did get challenging over those times, to say, no, 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 you can do this. You've done it before. I had evidence that I could have a glass of wine and not have 3, or I could have a glass of wine and not have one for 3 weeks. So that evidence helped, that building that. I did have a big first my second year of being soberish, and that I had my first international flight and trip. Loved free wine on an international flight, right? You just like, time doesn't matter. You're like sleeping, you're watching movies, you wake up, they're like, you want wine? You're like, sure. And you like, time doesn't exist. So that flight was so interesting. And I didn't realize how important that would be for me to honor my soberish, or my sobriety even during that time, right? I had no drinks. And I woke up, we landed in Europe, and I felt so good. I mean, I was a little tired, but like, I felt good. I wasn't drowsy, and it was amazing. And traveling internationally, part was like enjoying wine. And, granted, we were in a place where it was more outdoors and wasn't as like restaurant focused, but I had one glass of wine over 10 days. And that wine was on a beautiful fjord in Norway with my family. And that was that. Had some non-alcoholic drinks along the way, but I added that to my muscle, right? So now that I know, when I go back on another international trip, or just a national trip, like, I'll be able to do that because I have the history that I've done it. And so that first year too, as long with like not feeling fearful, there's like a comfort, right? And just knowing that I've done this before, because that first year did feel uncomfortable. And so often we confuse being uncomfortable for not being the wrong thing, because we don't like pain. We don't want to be uncomfortable. But like, working through that discomfort, stuff becomes a little bit more comfortable. So in that second year, I was more comfortable to say, no, I'll have a glass of wine, or excuse me, a glass of old habits die hard. I'll have a glass of sparkling water when I'm out to dinner with friends, and I don't have to give an explanation. I felt more comfortable, asking, others if they want like a mocktail instead of just offering wine, right? I began to develop just a comfortability that second year. So, biggest difference number one, not as fearful. And this one is really interesting. So, two, slowly over the second year, sobriety and sober became both the most important part of my life and also consumed less of it. So let me explain that. So my soberish journey, my soberish life, my soberish decisions is abundantly important to me. It's allowed me to step into this space of relaunching my podcast and having conversations. Like I'm a different woman than I was 10 years ago. And I also don't think about it near as much as I did when I was drinking. I thought about alcohol a lot when I was drinking more consistently. It consumed so much mind space, so much. And again, if you're new here, I wasn't binge drinking. I wasn't off the chain. Like I was not making bad decisions. I wasn't getting DUIs, but it was a consistent drinking in my life. And so it would be like 3:00 and I'm like, oh, it's 4:30, too early to open up a bottle of wine. Or it would be, okay, where are we going to go to dinner? I don't want to go there because they don't have booze. So where are we going to go? It would be, how are we going to get home? Because I'm definitely going to have drinks. It would be waking up the next morning mad at myself because I had that extra glass of wine I didn't need and not feeling good. It took up so much space and energy and time and money. And so it slowly became something I didn't think about. So other things could occupy my brain, right? Like what I would do with my business, the conversations I want to have, go do activities. Like it opened up this space. So it slowly became, I didn't think about alcohol at all, but my sobriety is so freaking important to me. And so it's this interesting, I think the word's juxtaposition. And I just love it. It's so interesting because you would think that somebody who talks about being sober and has a podcast and a business and all these stuff would like, it would consume. It doesn't, because it's just become part of who I am, right? It's become part of how I operate. It's important to me. Just like I would talk about my friends, my family, other things, like it's just part of who I am. And it's the biggest, most important self-care I can do for myself. If I can, when I focus on my sobriety, focus on sobriety, like everything else goes, right? And again, life's not perfect. I still can get short-tempered. I still have bad days. That is 100%, but I'm able to deal with that. But it's so interesting because I didn't realize until I stepped out of it how much time and energy I spent on alcohol and thinking about it. Like so many times. It's fascinating. So again, that biggest difference to me is that it became something that is part of who I am, and it's the most important thing, but it also does not take up a lot of my time and energy and mind space. So let's crunch some numbers. Let me go see if I have this. Oh, it's over here. Sorry, slide away. I got to find my calendar. If you're on podcast, I am holding up my calendar. If you're seeing it, there you go. That's my calendar. I love tracking my days. I track my days for the year. I track my streaks. To me, it's just a great way to look back and think, oh, that's interesting. Like I had a drink that day for that purpose. Like it's good to kind of recognize like why it's important to me. And what's interesting is a lot of people are like, when do you decide? And I personally don't have like it has to meet a checklist of things, but it is a deep check-in. It is an honest check-in on when that happens. So we are going to talk about 4 numbers along my second year soberish, and I am so excited. So here is what the past 365 days of my sober journey look like. First number, 22. I had 22 drinks for the year. So that number easily could have done in a month, like very easily. According to the CDC, 8 drinks a week for a woman is a heavy drinker. And 8 drinks sounds like a lot, but when you start to do the math, you're like, typically if we have 1 glass of wine, we typically have 2, a couple nights a week, 4 weekends, like easily 8 drinks a week. and those 2 drinks a week, I think I had 1 mixed cocktail or 1 mixed drink. I had a Bailey's and coffee when we were in New York City, and the rest were wine. I did not have more than 2 glasses of wine or drinks one day, so I felt like, it never really got where I felt drunk, but those 22 drinks over 365 days was a big accomplishment because that first year, I had 2 2 experiences where I woke up the next day and I was like, I kind of regret that." It was interesting. One was I went for drinks. My dad had passed away, and so Katie, my wife, and I went for drinks, and I had 2 old fashions, which if you quit drinking, 2 old fashions is too many. And the other was we had friends over and we were hanging out at the pool, and I had 2 glasses of wine, and it was just I don't know if I didn't eat, it just didn't feel right. Like it wasn't that the energy of that moment wasn't right. I just didn't feel right. So those 22 drinks all felt really aligned with who I wanted to be, and I did not feel drunk. So, second stat, 30%. That is the percentage of drink that I cut down for my first year of when I had 32 drinks. It's a pretty significant number, right? 30%. Like a 30% reduction in anything is like pretty legit. And it's because again, I had that comfortability. I had gone through the first. That first year, like I would be like, oh, well, I have to have a drink on my birthday, or I have to have a drink on somebody else's birthday or on Christmas, or like I had equated so much, like it was like, no, 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 you don't. And I had built that up to like, no, I don't have to have that. There's no reason I have to drink, right? I had built that in and it was more of a choice. And just that mindset of like, I just started to not want them as much. Like I really didn't. It was like I would go and I would think, do I want a glass of wine or do I just think I do because I always have? But that 30% is just so big for me because it really was a starting to see, oh, naturally you're not wanting this as much. So 30% the amount I cut down. My third number, which this is the most fascinating number to me, and I tell everybody about it when I talk about this. Okay, 41%. 41% of my 22 drinks happened in 1 month. 1 month. Anybody guess what month that would be? Probably December. You're probably right. It was December and I had 9 drinks. I'm like, wow. And looking back now, it feels like a lot. But 2 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, that's like not even that much, right? But it was December. I I had a work trip. I had a fun trip. We had international friends visit. It was Christmas. It was holiday parties, all the things. And so it's just fascinating that almost half of the drinks I had during the year were in 1 month. But when I look back, that wasn't a problem. Those 9 drinks didn't derail me. Those 9 drinks, and I didn't feel drunk. I was always present. They didn't cause me to wake up with regret or sadness or guilt. And also, it was also really interesting to know, oh, hey, those are maybe the times that like you're going to want to have a drink and then get to decide, is that okay? Right? Because as long as it's always in better service of myself and as long as it's not getting in the way of what I want, like for me, that's good. That's fine. That's why I'm doing this soberish journey. Right. But I just thought that was interesting and how it was. And now looking back, how kind of sneaky it was, right? You're like, oh, like I'll just have 1 glass and then like, oh, like I love New York. We're going to Broadway. Like, let's have a glass of wine and a nice dinner before we go. Okay, cool. And then just like slowly, like it's really easy to see how quick it can get out of control. But I just thought that was like such a fascinating number to say. Hey, I would have had 9 drinks if like December didn't exist. But Decembers are always going to exist. Work trips are always going to exist. Friends coming over are always going to exist. So it's really finding that balance. And now the biggest number of all is 0. 0 regrets, 0 moments of guilt, 0 moments of shame, 0 moments of self-berating, 0 mornings of waking up sluggish, of broken promises, of talking shit to myself on why you can't get it together. All of that, 0. 0 regrets, 0 feeling terrible. Zero not waking up to say I wanted to do. None of that. I had none of that. And, you know, and yes, there were times, again, nothing's perfect. There are times that that comes up. Maybe I am just like tired and I don't want to do something right. But like, I'm not working against myself by drinking to do the things that I want to do. So I am extremely proud of this year, or excuse me, last year. I cannot wait to see what's ahead. And, what is ahead? People are like, well, what's your goal of the year? I'm like, I don't necessarily have a goal number wise, but like my goal is to 100% every day be truly aligned to the sober living of making myself the number one priority. And if somehow every once in a while booze comes into that, that's fine. But that's my priority. So I'm really curious to see what my numbers look like next year. Um, I'm like 4 days into this new soberish year, so I've got some time to figure that out, but it's really continuing this and starting programs and doing some sober launches if you're watching and coaching to say this can be you. You can create your own path and freedom to alcohol. Nobody gets to tell you how you do this. I don't even get to tell you how to do this, but I can tell you here to support. Or excuse me, I can be here to support. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, that was my 2-year sober Birthaversary experience. And so would love to hear from you. Are you on this soberish journey and how I can support? So if you like this, please forward to a friend, please leave a review, and please shoot me a message. Let me know how it impacted you, what questions you have. So thank you for tuning in. And remember, everything you want is on the other side of saying no to that drink.